guys, it's Gretchen and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I thought I would do another piercing video. I've done, I think, like 2 other piercing videos where I talked about my nostril piercing and my conch piercing. But for today, I thought I would talk about my septum piercing. Now, my septum piercing is my most recent piercing. It was done, I'd say, I think it was 7 weeks ago, 7 or 8 weeks ago. So it's not like fresh, but at the same time, it's not exactly old either. 6 weeks is kind of a good time frame for it. That's when they tell you, you can start changing your piercing. Piercings do take a while to heal, but your septum one is one of those ones where you can actually change it relatively early, kind of, sort of. I am not a professional piercer. I'm just a person that likes piercings a lot, so I can't really comment on what is the best time to change your piercing, but I've read and I've heard that 6 weeks is a good time to start changing it if you want to. Now, I have changed my septum twice, and by changed I mean I've changed it to other jewelry that's not what I currently have in, because that's what I was pierced with. I had to change it for my surgery, so I had to put in a plastic retainer. That was at the 3-week mark, which was really early to be changing it, but unfortunately I had to because of my surgery. I was not allowed to have any metal anywhere. It all had to be plastic, but luckily when I came out of surgery, I was actually able to change it relatively soon afterwards, which was good. So it was only in there for about 4 hours before I was able to change it back to what I originally had in it, which was great. And then I changed it again to a septum clicker, and I believe I wore it for one of my videos previously. I like it, but it's a little low hanging for me. I want a septum clicker that's kind of closer to my nose, so I haven't worn that one as much. So I'm just sticking with what I originally was pierced with. I like the look of it. A lot of people are like, oh, well, why do you want to look like a bull? To which I'm like, oh, well, why do you want to look like an ass? Just saying. So for this video, I thought I would just talk about my experience, my thoughts on it, how it went for me, yada yada. So yeah, let's just talk about the septum. So I've been wanting to get my septum done for quite a while. It's been over 2 years that I've been wanting to get it done. I didn't really start thinking about actually getting it done until last March 2016, and that's around the time when I got my nostril done. I thought about getting the septum done just because of how easy it is to hide. I really do like that because, in the workplace, I don't think my employer would be against it. My employer has been really good about all my ear piercings and about my tattoos, but I don't want to push it, so I'm not gonna go to work with it hanging down. Usually when I get into work, pull into the parking lot, flip it up, stays up there all day. When I go home, comes down. Again, I don't think there would be any problems, but also I don't want to push it. I've gotten some mixed feelings on my septum. It is a more talked about piercing. Like ear piercings, you can hide them with your hair. They're a little bit more accepted, but my septum, a lot of people don't like a septum piercing. A lot of people, they always go to the, oh, well, why do you want to look like a bull? Only cows wear jewelry like that, yada, yada, yada. And, if that's what your viewpoint is, by all means, continue to think that. I personally think septum piercings are really cute. Sometimes they don't look right on people. I personally like how it looks on me. I think it looks great. I'm very happy with it. But yeah, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Just like piercings and tattoos in general are not everyone's favorite thing. There are plenty of people I know who are very much against tattoos and piercings, and then there are some who are like not necessarily against it, but they don't want it themselves. But for me, I just really like piercings and tattoos. There's something to be said about that little bit of a rush you get when you get a piercing. I'm always terrified about the pain, and I don't know why. At this point, I think I build it up more in my head, thinking that it's going to be super painful, thinking that it's going to be terrible, and I'm going to sit there and cry and scream and yada yada, and I'm going to bleed everywhere. But I haven't had that yet. I think because I build it up in my head to be a whole lot more painful, when the piercing actually happens, it's kind of like, oh, well, that was kind of a letdown. Not necessarily in the sense I'm not let down that it wasn't painful, but I had been stewing, you know, before the piercing, being like, oh my god, this is going to hurt so bad, let me just get it over with, and blah blah blah. Now, that is not to say that the septum didn't hurt at all. It did, and I probably will have to say that it was the most painful piercing I have had to date. But it wasn't excruciating, and it wasn't something that would keep me from getting it. You know, again, if I had to do it all over again, I would most definitely get it again. It wasn't so painful that I was just like, nope, nope, if I had to choose, I wouldn't have done that. And so when, you know, the needle goes through it, they find that sweet spot that people have. Some people don't have a sweet spot. Luckily, I did. I had been sitting there for weeks before I finally had determined that I was going to get this piercing. And I've been feeling like in my nose. It looked like I was picking my nose. And I was like, where the hell is my sweet spot? Because I didn't know really what I was looking for. I knew it was like that spot between the cartilage and like the top of your nose, and it was supposed to be a little bit more squishy, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't feel anything, it all feels the same. And so I was worried that I didn't have a sweet spot, but the piercer who did it said I did, so that's good. Glad I did. When I went for my septum piercing, I went with my mom, like always. Whenever I get a piercing, she gets a piercing. Usually we get the same piercings. Our ears are the same, except for they're swapped. So like I've got my tragus and a single helix on my left ear. She has her tragus and single helix on her right ear. Same thing with this. My conch and double helix are on my right ear, and her conch and double helix are on her left ear. Don't ask me why we decided to do that, but we just did. So when we went to get our piercings, I already have my nostril done. Well, she wanted her nostril done, so she got her nostril pierced. So I am ahead by one piercing on her. Actually, I'm ahead by 3 piercings technically, because I've got 3 lobes and she only has 2. But for things not lobe related, I am ahead by 1, which is my septum. I don't know if she'll ever do that, but you never know. So yeah, we went into the place that we normally go to, and this time the guy who normally does our piercings wasn't there that day. I think he had worked like earlier in the afternoon and then had gone home. So we had a girl, and she was super cool, super chill, really funny to talk to, really fun. For me, I have to make a lot of jokes and I have to laugh a lot, otherwise I'm gonna sit there and probably cry. So I was sitting there going like, oh, I'm gonna bleed like a stuck pig and blah blah blah, and I'm just terrified. And this time around was a little bit different, because usually I make my mom go first for piercings, because I always want to like read her reaction, though I've kind of learned by now that she doesn't really give me much of a reaction because her pain tolerance is apparently really high. And so for all of our ear piercings, she's always gone first, and I've always read her expressions to see what she was feeling at that time. Well, since we were getting different piercings this time, you know, she was getting her nostril, I was getting my septum, I was like, let me go first, because if I sit here any longer, I may chicken out again. And I've chickened out several times I'll get my septum done. So I went first. You know, clean it up like normal. It was a wonderful smell up my nose. Kind of smelled like a hospital. And so for me, when the piercing was done, you know, they put that lovely little clamp up there that feels so good. And now, I will say that everyone complains about the clamp. Everyone says, oh, that's the most painful part. That part sucked and it was pinched and blah, blah, blah. I didn't have a problem with the clamp. If anything, it made me feel better because I was like, all right, this clamp is in place. That needle is gonna know where to go through, or, you know, the piercer is gonna know where to go. But it didn't hurt me. Didn't pinch at all. The only time it hurt was when it first clamped down, and that's because it was a new sensation. But it didn't continue to hurt me like so many people say it does. So yeah, clamp was in place. She kept turning my nose up to make sure that it was all lined up. And then she was like, all right, deep breath in, as all piercings go. Very important to make sure that you continue to breathe while you get a piercing. Because, you know, you could pass out. There have been times, several of my ear piercings, I have held my breath. And I didn't pass out or anything, or feel like I was gonna pass out, but that possibility was there. I could have. So when she was getting ready to put the needle through, she had it lined up and everything, and then she put it through. She started on my left side, going to the right. So she shoved the needle through, and I felt that. That was one painful son of a bitch. And then it stopped. And like, it wasn't like a full stop, like, oh, well now there's a needle just hanging out of my nose. But it was like just long enough where you could tell that the needle was trying to go through and the nose was like, hold on a second. And so my mom said that she could see the girl kind of just wiggle it slightly. And then it went through. It wasn't like she was like, oh shit, I pierced it in the wrong spot. It was just, it met resistance. And even though it is in the sweet spot, there's still gonna be resistance there because it's still pretty damn thick. But I could feel all that happening. So finally, you know, it went through. It was less than like 2 seconds. It didn't take any time, but there was like, you know, those milliseconds in there where it was just like, so yeah, it did hurt. I was prepared for it to hurt though. Everyone that I really knew had said it hurt. There were a few people who were like, oh, it doesn't hurt at all. I probably wouldn't go as far to say that it didn't hurt at all. I have a pretty high pain tolerance. A lot of people say that their conch hurt really bad. I didn't feel that at all. So I don't know if my pain tolerance is just high or what. But I felt the septum. And again, like all of my piercings, the most painful part is getting the jewelry through. And I guess it's just because it's so fresh at that point that any more movement against it kind of irritates it and hurts it. So she had the needle in, then she just hooked the little horseshoe through. And so that was the most painful part just because it kind of stung. Now, I did bleed. I ended up bleeding, and I don't normally bleed for my piercings. My tragus bled a little bit when I had that pierced, but it wasn't like the blood I had here. Now, it's kind of funny because the night before I got my septum pierced, I had a massive nosebleed. A massive nosebleed. I was playing a video game with my brother and his friend on the computer, and all of a sudden I just smelled blood. And I was like, something is going on. Well, then my face got hot. And I was like, I need to run to the bathroom. Something is wrong with my nose. Well, before I could even stand up, I looked down and there were just drops of blood on my desk. And I have an IKEA desk with my computer on it, and it's, you know, pure white, and all of a sudden you just see these red drops everywhere. I had a massive nosebleed. I went through, I'd say 20 tissues trying to clean myself up, because the minute I stood up and bolted for the bathroom, it was like the floodgates had released. So my nose had already been through a traumatic day the night before, having this massive nosebleed. So then she pierced it and it did bleed. It wasn't a gusher like my nosebleed from the night before, but it was still noticeable that, you know, a tissue needed to clean around my nostrils. But, you know, it wasn't like, it was like, release the floodgates. You know, it didn't gush out everywhere. But I just thought it was kind of a weird situation where I had had a nosebleed. Like, I haven't had a nosebleed in years. I'm pretty sure the last time I had one, I was like just starting high school. So I don't know where this one came from. I don't know if it was because like the air was dry or something like that. But I just thought it was kind of funny that my poor nose, it had been through it that weekend. It had had some damage done to it. So then after I was pierced, my piercer was like, all right, are you gonna have to have this up for work? And I said, most likely. And she's like, all right, I wanna see you flip it up and flip it back down. Which I thought was really important, because it is important to know that. And so she was like, all you're gonna do is you're gonna like elongate your top lip and your nose like that. And she's like, and then you're just gonna take, you know, your fingers and just shove it up there. So it looks something like that. Gone. Can't even tell unless I like turn my head up and you see the shinies. Then to pull it back down, you once again elongate your nose and your top lip. You take your fingers again and you kind of dig it out. So, ta-da, it's back out. Doesn't take much to do it. You just flip it up, you flip it down, whatever. To me now, it doesn't hurt. Sometimes I'll hit my nose and then it starts to hurt, like if I hit it on the tip. I hit it earlier today, and so it is a little sore, but like the piercing itself, you know, doesn't hurt. I still get a little crusties around it, but I just take some H2O and a Q-tip and just clean that sucker away. No big deal. But yeah, so I've had this for 7 to 8 weeks. Haven't had any issues with it. No bleeding, no infections, just your normal crusties that come along with new piercings. So yeah, it really wasn't a bad experience. I'd say on a pain scale of 1 to 10, I would say maybe a 6, if that, maybe a 5 or a 6. It really wasn't bad. So if you yourself are looking at getting a septum piercing, you really can't rely on other people's pain tolerances. You can't really rely on their experience, because everyone's experience is different. No one is going to have the same pain tolerance. You know, I say it was a 5 or a 6. Someone else may say it was off the charts at like a 10. Someone else may be like, it was just a 2 for me. Everyone varies, but you know, hopefully you do your research before you get a piercing and you understand how the process is done, how to take care of it, what you need to do to make sure that it heals properly, and just know your own body, because knowing your own body is going to help you when it comes to that pain. But don't sit there and stew about your pain, because that's what I did. And you know, I finally got it done, and I'm very happy I finally got it done. But it took me a long time because I was scared of the pain. That was the main reason why I hadn't gotten it done, was because I didn't know how painful it was going to be. But after, you know, for all of the piercings I'm interested in, I always look up and see what people rate the pain, and it always varies. So just do your research, know what you're in for, but don't take anyone's pain rating to heart because it's going to be different for everyone. So that is it for my septum piercing experience, how it's doing now. It's probably my favorite piercing that I've gotten so far. I absolutely adore it. I love how it looks, and it's such a great piercing. I wouldn't trade it for the world, and if I had to do it again, I most definitely would, because I love it that much. If you have any questions about septum piercings, you know, you can leave a comment or drop me a line. I would be more than happy to answer it. Again, everyone's experience is different, but I would be more than happy to relay my experience further if need be. And that does it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. And until next time, bye guys!